We're recording. Okay. All right. I'm Kathryn Wittwer.
I'm Stacie Henry.
I have a little boy with Down syndrome and he is 11. His name is Eddie, and most people know him because Oakley Peterson will post stories and pictures, and that's how I get remembered because I don't really have much of a footprint there, but I'm grateful for her and love being recognized out in our community because of her by Eddie. So that's kind of what began my advocacy work as far as inclusion and, you know, the whole world of special needs.
And I have a son named Mark who is 21. And so he launched me into my world of advocacy, but I've been doing it for just a couple of years longer.
Yeah. So this is totally out of our wheelhouse, and we're a little bit old school, you know, handwritten notes. We don't do technology. We're on the same page there. So we just joined up today to do this together to be more of an informal conversation between friends. So we welcome questions at any point. My son is still in elementary school, so I'm kind of just brand new to the PTA world, and I'm just starting. And luckily I was pointed to Stacie, who's been at it a few more years and has a lot more knowledge on the subject. So I'm so grateful she was willing to join me today. Let me first start. So We All Belong. It is a group of moms, and it began because out here we live in South Jordan, Daybreak. We're in the Jordan School District, and they wanted to remove the peer mentoring programs, so the support classrooms, from 2 of our high schools. And teachers had to reach out to us saying, we tried to stop this, people don't know about it, but the district's doing it anyway. So of course we rallied. We reached out to everyone we knew. We started to protest. We started to gather the community, and I was amazed at the community support. The teenagers, the parents that we had show up. We had PTAs from both high schools show up in support and protest, and it really opened my eyes to what a great support system the PTA can be. And my older daughters, I have 4 kids, and my 2 older kids went to a charter school, and I didn't really have any PTA knowledge or background. I think their parent group was run differently, and I just really didn't have to get involved. My kids were easy and sailed through those years. But Eddie came along, and the charter was not the right fit, and they kind of pushed us out. And so we entered back into the public school system. And my son by 3rd or 2nd grade had bounced around about 6 different schools. And I know how hard it can be to get involved in multiple schools. If your child is bused to a different school than your other children out of their community, it can be really hard to know what goes on in the other school. They don't really let us in the classroom a whole lot, do they? Same story, you're here.
Absolutely. And when he started, he had bounced around a couple of schools and was in what my district, I'm in Granite School District, what my district calls a unit. And they're pretty isolated. He was at his first placement was 45 minutes away from my home, which was unacceptable. And I had to argue to have him placed closer to home. But once I did have him placed closer to home, he was still at a school not anywhere close to my neighborhood. And I had to make a real concerted effort to drive to his school to insert myself. I was a little aggressive and inserted myself into the classroom quite a bit. I made sure that the teachers had the supplies that they needed, and really tried to make sure that classroom was supported more like a typical classroom. I tried to be a PTA room mom for that classroom. And because of some of the relationships I developed in that classroom, it started opening more doors. I was able to network a little better with families and meet some of the other parents, because these are the students that my son would have been. He was in, they were his cohort going all the way through his entire public school education experience. So it really helped. And once he was out of, I have, my situation's a little unique. He's a summer birthday, and I did advocate for him to be retained in 1st grade. So when he was retained in 1st grade, I had him move to our neighborhood school, and he was mainstreamed was the term that we used then, into that school environment where there was not a unit. He was pulled out to the resource room for any of the supports he needed, but he was able to be in a typical classroom with typical peers for a good part of his day, and definitely during any of the PE or any of the activities that weren't strictly academic, he was pulled out. He was able to be included in those classrooms. So because of that, I really wanted to support the schools. And I had been involved in PTA up to that point, and slowly just and to be honest, I didn't think what I was doing was really anything special. I wasn't contributing much more time than I had. I really didn't think I was backup. I was a backup singer, I guess. I would support whatever they needed, and really tried to be a part of the organizations that were supporting the students in our schools. And yeah.
I wanted to jump real quick back. I didn't finish
please.
No, you're doing great. But I didn't finish the We All Belong movement. That, of course, that decision was reversed. Our heads were spinning. I think it happened really quick when they realized the community support wanted these programs to be kept at these schools, that these students wanted it there. They were silencing teachers, threatening them with their jobs if they were going to speak out on the news for us. I mean, Debbie Worthen covered it. I think she won an Emmy for her coverage on her story. We were so grateful for all the support that we saw. And when that decision was reversed, it means we get to keep those programs in our schools where my son will be and all of his siblings will be. But we also started the We All Belong mom group of, you know what, there's a lot to be done here. And it opened our eyes to the advocacy and the needs of our children and the voice that they don't have in the public school system. So we started having meetings with everyone we could get a hold of, you know, our superintendents, the USBE. So we sat down with Utah State Board of Education, and it was shocking because they were very proud of their inclusive measures at their data. And they started showing us, you know, because roughly 22% of kids are on IEPs, give or take. And so they were very proud of that data, and they showed how they were accomplishing inclusion. And us moms sitting at the table kind of said, hold up. We don't see our children who are by diagnosis sent on a path of maybe these cluster units. It's a little different. The names are different in every school. We call them cluster classes, support classrooms. Your district's a unit classroom. I don't know.
And it all means the same thing. It all means that our children are segregated in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
And when we said, where's our kids' representation? They were kind of stunned and realized, well, our kids are that 1%, and they weren't on their data for inclusion. And we just kind of said, wow, there is a real need here for our children to be able to learn among their typical peers, their siblings, to be given the same opportunities. They don't even get a seat at the table because of their diagnosis. They don't even get a chance to prove themselves or to learn alongside their peers. You know, they're put in these classrooms where the teacher burnout is extremely high because it's hard if you have these behavior kids all learning from each other all day long. It is just kind of a very stressful environment. And so we decided that we were going to try and pilot a program in our boundary school. And it's been a couple of years of a lot of ups and downs. It's not been a smooth process, but we got our children into their boundary school, at least for those that live in our boundary. And I'm lucky that I have lots of moms in our neighborhood with kiddos with special needs that wanted the same thing. So I think we had to unite together to make our voices heard and be louder. In that way, it's hard to find each other. And so I had this grand idea, let's make this statewide special ed PTA. It's called a SEPTA, and it's a charter that exists. It's just not in Utah. And the Utah State Board of Education said, well, why don't we put you as a PTA inclusion specialist for the state first? And then I kind of went, I don't even know this world. How about I start at my local school? Let me figure this out, you know, where I can do make the most difference for my child. So I kind of just started now at the elementary school level. And I'm surprised at all the efforts that these PTA members make. These parents are so involved. Every school has a little bit of a different culture, different needs, different programs, different process. So I think you just have to jump in. You know, I don't feel equipped or very knowledgeable as far as PTA goes, but what I do know is what my son needs. And I am his best advocate. I think it's a muscle that we as parents develop. We overnight are just thrown into this world. Some know I was a birth diagnosis. I didn't know my head was spinning at birth, but you quickly realize that you will do whatever it takes to meet your child's needs. And I think we are the best person to represent that. And we are just all jumping in, learning as we go. And every little effort we make will make a difference. And so let's first start. How do we join the PTA? What do you even do?
So you'll hear a lot of terms thrown around. PTA and PTSA are under the same umbrella. They are the same organization. The PTA is primarily in elementary schools, and PTSA is when you add students into the organization, and that typically starts in junior high. So as a junior high student, your students can join the PTA as a student, and it's a PTSA. And those students can then be utilized by the local PTA president to run programs. They can be on a committee that does all sorts of fun things, but the easiest way to find out how you can join PTA, I believe that all schools in the state of Utah have it's called Member Hub. Have a Member Hub account, or their school will have a website that has a link where you can join your local PTA. And then it's as easy as letting your PTA president, and you can find out who that is either by asking at the office, or if your school, a lot of schools have social media or their own websites or Facebook pages for their PTAs. And you can find a lot of information just by looking up and searching for those resources in those ways. But it's as easy as finding out how much your school charges, and typically fees to join are between $5 and $10, so they're relatively nominal. And if your school doesn't have a PTA, you can actually start one with as few as 10 people. And all of the instructions for that are on the state PTA website, and that's just utahpta.org. That is a great resource. There are so many links, and you can get lost in the maze that is their website. But there's a lot of information on there. There are some really fantastic programs. I just learned that there's a whole special ed arm of, if you've ever heard of the Reflections program. Oh, yeah. There's a whole arm that is specifically for kids with different abilities. Wow. And they get judged separate from their typical peers and have the same opportunities. It's really a remarkable thing. There are every PTA could and should have an inclusion specialist, someone who is looking out for the needs of the differently abled students in their schools. And that can be anything from a behavioral issue to, there are children with epilepsy that if you're having like a 6th grade dance, and you probably shouldn't have strobe lights. There are things that you get into this culture of your PTAs have a reputation of kind of doing the same things year to year to year, and being an inclusion specialist can really help shake that up a little bit. So and help create awareness for one, and create opportunities for students who maybe feel marginalized or left out, including their own student.
Right. So our dues are $5, and anyone can join, and anyone can come to meetings, and it's once a month. And, they're so organized. At least I'm really impressed by my PTA president and grateful for her. She actually adopted a daughter from China who's in a wheelchair. So her knowledge of needing to make the school accessible is really beneficial. And when I asked to join, she said, great, can we give you a title? And I think we just made this up. It's Commissioner of Special Needs. And I am at the meetings because all of the activities that they are planning, they want my eyes on it, because now that we have the support classroom in our school, we have 12 students, and they should be considered when we're talking about things like school dances or the spelling bee, reflections. And I am now that voice to say, oh, hey, how can we modify that? Because I want my child to be able to fully participate in that. And some things that we've done this year so far with the spelling bee, we're making plans for next year to make a modified spelling bee so that these kids can practice and participate and compete, just like the other kids get to do, but more at an appropriate level. And that is not something our schools ever had to do before. It hasn't even occurred to them that, maybe we need to include these students. And then in turn, we get the whole school to rally and support and cheer them on too. And then, as we know, our kids really benefit their typical peers. They offer a lot to their community, to their schools. They bring a joy, a happiness, a love that is unmatched, but they also allow those students to be leaders and to take them by the hand and be the good examples. And you see those that are just naturally willing and good at it. And then you create little community councils or little chairmen out of those students willing to participate and bring them on board with activities that we modify. Another thing I'm excited about that we are doing is tonight, Mathnasium. It's a math tutoring company. They are hosting a math night at our school, and they do it every year. And they just invite parents and students to come and do all of these math games. And then if you complete all the tasks, there's drawings to enter for raffle prizes, and they're great prizes. And I just jumped right in saying, hey, have you ever modified this for kiddos with intellectual disabilities? And they never had. They've never been asked to. And so I've been collaborating to say, hey, let's simplify these games, or let the parent walk them through so that the child can still be a part of it and still get that checked off so they can enter for the prizes and the drawings, just because some of these can be really complicated and way over our kids' head. And a lot of parents, they show up for activities and it's not modified or adapted for their kid. And then you feel like an outsider. And it's hard to show up to these things with a child with behaviors or asking for, things that not every child has to ask for. It can be pretty exhausting.
Yeah.
So our hope is to do that ahead of time and then let these kids know that this has been adapted for you. You are being considered in these activities, and then just hoping that those parents will show up, because we go to a lot of effort now once we're in the PTA trying to do that. Oh, hi. And so I think that's how so I think another thing that's really important is to support each other, to realize, okay, one person might be taking on that role, but that's to benefit your child and the whole community, and to rally and support and show up. Because I can advocate all day from inside the PTA, but if I don't have the students showing up, their families, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. It's not going to be very applicable when we do all of these extra measures. What have you seen?
Well, the whole PTA model, the national motto is, and you'll see it on all of their branding, it's every child, one voice. And that is the PTA's primary goal, is to be an advocate for every child. And that includes those with, it doesn't matter. Any child that falls under their umbrella is going to be advocated for. And so the PTA really can be a great tool to advocate for those things. So you have at each individual school, you will have a local PTA, but the chain goes all the way up to national. And so there is, every school district has a PTA. They call them region directors. And those region directors oversee every school in their school district. And over those region directors, this is specific to Utah, every region director will then have, they report to the state PTA. And there are great resources all the way up. The state PTA has people who will advocate for your children at the legislature. So this really can be, and those advocacy voices are based on our membership. So even if you don't have a lot of time to contribute, being a member allows for a bigger voice for our PTAs. And there's a lot of advocacy that the PTAs can do for our students in the schools, because they are so hands-on. They work so closely with administration. The region president, the region directors work very closely with the superintendency and the school board, and really have a great influence on policies and changes that are being made. So being able to work through that chain, and it trickles down to your kids, but I started from the bottom up, and I found that the most meaningful changes for my student individually were when I was hands-on in the school, and the students got to see my face as well as his. Everywhere I go, I'm known as Mark's mom. And so true. Most people know me as Mark's mom, because of the opportunities that I was able to, that I was aware of because of PTA and me being in the school. You don't, if you're not on site, it becomes very challenging to know what opportunities are available and exactly how things work, especially when you get into secondary education. There tend to be a lot of programs going on at the junior highs and high schools, and it becomes very easy for our children to be marginalized and lost. And if you don't have relationships that allow you to kind of pave those pathways, it becomes really challenging. And one of the best benefits, one of the best, I don't know, the thing that served me the best was going into situations where there was an opportunity that I knew I wanted for Mark, that I didn't know exactly how to make it happen, going in and without a real preconceived idea of how it would be implemented, and working with the administration and his teachers and the PTA to come up with a solution for his needs and to accommodate those opportunities for him. And it made a tremendous, it didn't, rarely did those opportunities ever look in the end like I had anticipated in the beginning, but usually they were far better than I could have created on my own. So being involved with the PTA is really an easy, it's an organization that exists. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it's a very easy way to get into your children's schools and really start making meaningful changes for our children.
Yes, when I joined the PTA, I had a few initiatives and a few ideas, because as moms, we had already been doing assemblies, awareness month activities, inclusion week activities, and those things we were just kind of paying for from our own pockets. And I realized there is funds here, and this is something that benefits the school and should be a part of the school curriculum and fundraising, and it should go towards these awareness activities that we are trying to plan. And so I pitched, we do assemblies for Down Syndrome Awareness Month, Autism Awareness Month, and any other awareness that we might have in our school. And we just ask moms to come and teach those, and they're done in this little breakout area, and we do small groups at a time, but we work through the whole school. So every classroom comes and gets to participate. And then we give handouts or candy or whatever little toy or whatever we want to add to our assembly to raise awareness. We pass out to the school, and the school, the PTA did allow us to budget for those assemblies and for those inclusion week activities. And so they put funds towards those for us, which greatly helps our planning and our ability to make those bigger and better every year, and to really make those a celebration for the whole school, because funds matter. It's expensive. We have 800 plus students in our school, and it was getting expensive to raise that awareness on our own. So I'm so grateful for that support, and the PTA was more than happy to do that. We luckily had lots of funds. I think post-COVID, there has been a buildup of funds in most schools just because we've not been in person for a couple of years and kind of have those reserves there, but they were more than happy, and they are contributing, participating, and ready to pitch in. And just on the flip side, I'm also showing up for things like the Chinese New Year celebration. My children aren't in the immersion program, but as a PTA member, I want to show my investment, my involvement, because just like Stacie said, you need to show up. You need that administration knowing your face, knowing your child, and being that voice. And it's really important that you go in with a collaborative energy, because when we went head to head with our district and that whole thing, we kind of made some enemies. We made them a little afraid of us, which was just sad, because that's the way it needed to be done. We had to shame them. We had to show that this was not okay. And now we're in a rebuilding mode where we really need to rebuild that support system and show them that we just want to collaborate. And sometimes the status quo is unacceptable. Our children deserve that same learning environment to be among their siblings and advocate and push for what your kid needs. You know best what they need. And so being that voice from within is wonderful. And I think schools welcome it. My administration is fantastic. We're so lucky we have their support, and they are so gung-ho. They just say, pitch us an idea and run with it. And we just had a meeting with the Unified Sports Special Olympics program, and they've just created an elementary school program. And so we're piloting that now. And Sammy's Buddy program is another wonderful thing. And that is all intertwined with the PTA, because the more activities we have, the more supports, the more we need to budget for things. That just is a collaboration for the whole school. And they're seeing the benefits because, I don't know, Mark, he's a pretty cool kid. I've gotten to spend some time with him. And he graduated from Olympus High School, which me and my husband also did. And he was the mascot for many years, right? He was the Titan.
Yeah, he was our Titan for a few years. And and because of that, he's still, I mean, I still am pretty, I still have students at the high school, but I'm pretty well aware of what goes on at the high school now. And it becomes very easy for me to go in and talk to administrators when there's an issue, or if there's something that I can help with. I always try to lend my support and help wherever I can. It's been a few years since I've been in the elementary school, but there I was, you can spend as much time as you would like in the elementary schools. There's quite the needs that is likely from my perception and my experience, that was the most like time intensive portion of the PTA. That's where you spend the most time, but it's also where you reap the greatest benefit, because those relationships that you form in those early elementary years carry all the way through high school. The students and the teachers and the administration, because the administration doesn't stay where they are. So I now have two of my principals that I worked very closely with now have pretty big district jobs. They have big district responsibilities, and I know that if I were to call them, and I have done and they love Mark. they become very attached to they became very attached to him. But because I have those relationships, it has given me other avenues that I can advocate for Mark or for other students when it's needed. And that's I think the thing I have enjoyed the most about my PTA journey is my need to advocate for Mark will never go away. That's always going to be there. However, it has opened the door for me to be able to advocate for all children across my district. So being able to understand what needs are outside of my little bubble with Mark has been really, it's been really enriching. I really enjoy being able to advocate for all of the kids and helping keep it's really easy at the district level to be concerned by budgets and numbers and statistics and to help be the voice of those children for that district leadership is really a powerful thing, and they really appreciate that. They love that input, and most administrators will they want that. They're looking for that kind of feedback because they understand that their view is limited as well, and they need input from all areas in order to make the best decisions that they can for the students in their district. So it really becomes and PTA does work very closely with that district leadership, with the superintendency and with those that work for all the kids. So it's really a cool thing.
I am surprised at how much pull and weight the PTA has.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have the principal's ear all the time. They know the pulse of the school, the community. They know what's going on. They know the needs. And I'm jumping in trying to catch up because I feel like I should know more than I do. And I should, you know, have this background knowledge, but I don't. But it's okay. It doesn't matter where you start. You jump right in, being that voice, and you will make changes, however big, however small. And it's a stepping stone. When I first spoke to Stacie about PTA, she let me know that they are up at the legislative sessions. They are up there advocating at the Capitol. I didn't know they had agendas. They had laws that they were backing or fighting against, and I wasn't even made aware. How do we find those resources?
The Utah PTA will have on their website on utahpta.org. They will, during the legislative session, they typically have a bill tracker, and they will follow all of the bills that affect education and children. And they really, they give you a synopsis of the bill, and then they tell you whether they are for and against that bill and why. And then you can link from there and find how to contact your local representatives and senators and advocate for whatever your belief is. And I didn't know this. This was something I learned recently, but it only takes 20 emails to change the vote of a legislator on the Hill in Utah. 20 emails, 20 responses, 20 opinions, 20 whatever coming from a constituent can change a vote. So every individual voice matters when you and knowing what those issues are and how to advocate for them, and maybe some of the ramifications for, sorry, I was looking for a word, ramifications for our children, how that you might not be aware of, it's very important to be able to speak that way to our kids, because as we've learned, things start on Capitol Hill. They all start with the legislature, and if it's much easier to change a law before it goes on the books than it is to change a law after it's on the books and try and amend something. So the more positive changes we can make before those laws are on the books and voted on and signed, the better. And PTA really does a great job keeping track of those. There's a whole arm of the PTA that is specifically for that legislative advocacy.
I love that that exists, because so often it's overwhelming to just find the
Mhm.
pros, the cons, even understand the bill proposed and how it will impact our children. So sounds like they do all the work for us.
They do.
We just get to go and
Yeah. And if you ever were interested and wanted to attend every year during the session, our legislative session, they have a day that they invite the PTA up. And this year, I want to say it was on February 17th. It's usually mid-month. And you can absolutely, you just get online and register for it. And then you go up, and there's usually a room assigned to the PTA, and you can go watch a session of them vote on some bills. And they try and keep the bills that they vote on during that session pertinent to the PTA. There, you can speak to your individual legislators, and it's really cool. It gives you face-to-face access, and it's usually not well attended, so you get quite it's a pretty exclusive interaction with your legislators. So pretty cool.
I think this younger generation, younger than me, are really good at getting the word out there. Our social media platforms, that is how news spreads, right? And if we can rally, if we can just get these words out there and the knowledge out there, because I feel like even the Utah State Board of Education's PTR branch, I met with them and asked them, how are you spreading the word? I know you have all these great things going on. How are you getting and reaching the community? And their response was they were hanging up flyers in libraries and on bulletin boards, and sending them paper hard copies to schools, but those don't make it home to the parents. I know there are Facebook groups for a lot of these things, but I don't even think they had one at the time. Maybe they do now, but I just think it's up to us to get involved, to start whatever level, whatever approach you're passionate about. Just jump in, be a voice, and support your schools, support your communities, advocate for your kid from within. Show those teachers, I'm not just here to complain, because I know as a SPED parent, it's like you have to fight so hard for your children. You have to, my son is verbal, but he can't communicate all of his needs. He can't advocate for himself in the way that would inspire change. So I must do that for him, and I will do it for him, right? As parents, that's what we are most passionate about, is their emotional and mental and physical health. And at school, that should be taken into consideration on both sides, right? Yes, my son might need more resources, and that might drain the school or exhaust the school in some ways, because that chatter, that gossip, it's reaching us as parents, and we want to correct that narrative that we are just unhappy, unsatisfied all the time. No, we want to collaborate with our schools. We want to show those teachers supports. I mean, I don't know of any of my son's support classrooms that had a room mom.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing, because they were not even letting parents in like the typical classroom. So the fact that we don't even have room moms there to facilitate parties and activities and to support those teachers, that's got to be exhausting for them. And
well, I mean, how many times have you donated supplies to your child's classroom?
Right.
And those support classrooms, they don't get those same supplies. The teachers are generally buying them out of either their budget, their meager budget that they get from the school, or from their own budgets. And it's stupid things like tissues. So even though they don't invite us into the classroom a lot of times, don't ever let that stop you from trying to contribute and trying to support that classroom. I always would have a conversation at the beginning of the year with every single one of Mark's teachers, whether it was a regular ed classroom teacher, or whether it was in his unit, in a resource room, wherever it was. I made sure that they knew that they had my contact information, so that they could, if there was a need in the classroom, that they could contact me. If they needed tissues, I could bring them in or send them with Mark. So or hand sanitizer. That was a big one. Always hand sanitizer. So making sure that helps support a classroom, because then they're not, it allows for the teacher to focus more on our students. And that's the primary goal. That was my primary goal going in, was to remove as much of the things around the teacher that he or she was concerned about, so that they were able to focus on the students and their job. And that was what I wanted to facilitate.
I do find it interesting, because when I met with our superintendent and our special ed director of our district, and we explained how we are going into the classrooms and helping to run these small groups, just like I would in my first graders classroom, right? Parent volunteers, we sign up, we show up, we run those small groups and rotations. And then we started to implement that into our support classroom. And their response was, no, don't say that. That goes against fate. Don't tell me that you're helping to educate your child in that support classroom. And I went, time out. How do we support inclusion and foster that environment and try to model after those typical classrooms if they keep us out of the classroom, if they're telling us if it's a violation of a free and appropriate education? I really didn't understand that approach. And I feel like depending on who you talk to, they're going to give you a million different answers to keep you out of that classroom, to give you all the reasons why, IEPs, our privacy laws are, you're not supposed to have any knowledge of these kids' curriculums or whatever it is. And honestly, that just comes down to administration. If they will let you into the classroom, building those relationships so that they know and trust you and know that you are there to build and support the teacher. Because that one teacher, even if she has 3 to 5 aides, still can't reach each kid one-on-one. They do need our supports. They need us to show up and run those small groups and to be that help in the classroom, just like a typical classroom. They're not able to do it on their own.
No.
And I don't know why they push back on letting us come in and model those other classrooms, but we're doing it. Stacie did it all through Mark's.
Yep. And rules were pretty tight. They really discouraged parents from being in the classroom. In fact, I never saw other parents in the classroom, but I was there, and the teachers knew me, and they knew that if they needed something, they could call me, and they did call. And that was very comforting to me, to be able to have that relationship and know that they were looking out for my child. And I'm not saying that every teacher that Mark had was fantastic. They weren't. But being able to look past that and know that this was the set of circumstances that I had for that year or those couple of years, and supporting that teacher can only make the classroom better. Where if you go in and are constantly trying to criticize, if there's a lot of criticism, it never benefits the classroom. And I'm not great doing it as a parent, but as a parent in the school, I did pretty good at making sure that the teachers always felt supported by me. If there was a real concern, if I saw something that was really concerning, I would always go to the administration and handle it in a way that was discreet, where the teacher did not feel like they were being attacked, because that really can upset the whole classroom if you have a teacher not feeling supported. So supporting the teacher in whatever way you can is always a good idea.
And I love getting to know all of the kiddos in Eddie's little support classroom. They're all so unique and have different needs. And then as I come to learn their personalities, I know how to advocate and remove those barriers as they interact with their peers or my own children. And I can teach them about maybe how to interact, how to successfully, join them in their world or whatever it is that they enjoy doing. And I think we touched on that it does need to start in elementary school, those friendships that will carry on and ultimately to meaningful employment, because your community will know your child. They will know their personality. They will from these young ages have watched them grow and progress and can see the progression, right? Because our kids will always be behind their typical peers. We accept that. They have their own interests and abilities, and they will excel in the things they choose. And if a community knows that about our child, that will lead to meaningful employment, to opportunities that wouldn't be there if we didn't remove those barriers. And I just think PTA is a perfect place to begin.
Yeah.
To get involved in your school, to show the school that you support them, you support the administration, the cause, the efforts, the fundraising, and then you start to promote it and bring in all these other parents. We don't have a database of special ed parents.
No,
it doesn't exist. We can't just,
yeah,
go out, knock on every door and find each other.
You can't even find your kid on the school directory.
No, and they make it really private in these support classrooms. So joining the PTA, guess what? You get to know each other, and then you have each other's contact info. And then when those needs arise and you need to support and rally around a kiddo and their needs, you know who to call, you know who will show up for you. Yeah. And I love the people who've paved the way for us and are continuing to show up to help us and educate us and teach us. Because, Mark's, I think, success is largely due to your involvement in the school.
And I can't take much. He really, a lot of it was me supporting his desires and his, where he wanted to take his interests. And he's doing really well and has a great community support around him now as we're preparing to age out of the public education system this summer. So it really is heartwarming to me to know that he has a network of friends, and he is still beloved at the high school. He is still welcomed for most activities. There are some that I have had to say, you don't get to participate in that anymore because you're an adult. And he understands that. But there are a lot of opportunities for him to participate at the high school and maintain a lot of relationships, and he loves that. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? Does anyone have any
questions for us?
Folks, we have a small group, so feel free to unmute your microphone, or if you want to use the chat, you're welcome to use the chat as well.
You can keep talking.
I have a question. So maybe I was misunderstanding this. So I've understood the law is that you can go into your child's classroom at any time. You don't have to even tell them you're coming. That's your legal right. So
not according to the school. I've been told very different things.
Okay, so when I researched the actual law, you have the right as a parent to go into your child's classroom at any time. Oh yeah. Technically, you can't help, but you can go in, and I've noticed that has been a huge asset for me to just have eyes on things. I just periodically just pop in, and that has helped me to get good services, make sure that the services being provided are what my child needs. But as I've kind of done that, I've been able to build the relationship with the teachers, see what the needs are. And I feel like the teachers are always happy to have the help. It's the administration that tries to block that. So anyways, so you're saying that you had barriers going in and helping in special ed classrooms. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's, the administration always has told me that you're not supposed to be there, but and like you said, I had the legal right, or they would have implemented something more severe, more strict to keep me out. So I just ran with it and did what I wanted to do. But yeah, absolutely. You do. And you have the right to access to your child, no matter where your child is placed, anytime during the day. Yep. So yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
They will use any excuse they can, because sometimes when I show up, it does upset maybe some of those other students, and they see that, oh, it's exciting, and then it detracts from our learning. They'll give any excuse. And if the administration is not very supportive, they'll claim, I mean, I think post-COVID too, they really buckled down and changed all their rules. And I'm calling BS on a lot of it because
very restrictive.
you have to learn your rights as a parent. And unfortunately that comes with a lot of trial and error. You're told no, and is that the law? And then you have to go searching high and low for that. And unfortunately, that's just the road we're on. I don't know. And some schools have been really supportive and some schools have not. And it is our right to move our children, to advocate for them, and to just show up. Why not?
And I have to say that showing up led to some really great opportunities to meet some of the other parents, because I would suggest to the teacher, and most of that happened at the high school level, but I would suggest to the teacher, well, why don't we have a party for this? And we would have our own party, and they would invite parents, and they would potluck something, and it turned into a really great networking opportunity for the parents to be able to talk, and that was really beneficial to all of the students. So yeah, you really can make a difference just by being in the classroom and suggesting and developing that relationship with the teacher.
And you'll see a lot of things that are concerning, and you can bring those up in IEP meetings. I mean, we have some really high need behavior kids, and they're probably not being supported, but I'm not their parent, so I can only advocate for my child. So in his IEP, we specifically wrote, if the classroom environment is not conducive to learning, he needs to be removed into the hallway where he can focus and be taught one-on-one. And I am making sure that is implemented, because I know in that classroom, it's impossible. And I would only know that by being in the classroom and seeing those behaviors. And it's definitely something I need to advocate for my kid, but on a collective school level, we need to be the voice for all those kids. And I do think the Parent Teacher Association, it is teachers too. So we have several teachers in the PTA that come to our meetings. And if you could get your SPED teacher there and be that voice in the PTA advocating for the kids from within, how wonderful would that be? I don't know any SPED teacher willing yet. I've tried, but we just started this unified elementary school program, and our SPED teacher is on that inclusion committee along with some students and some of the my child and some of his friends from that support classroom. So it's a wonderful thing, and we're brainstorming together, and I see that they want change. They're just exhausted and overwhelmed, and that's what we need to know. We need to be hands-on so that we see the need and that we can fill that need and support them, because we need to keep them around. We've lost a couple teachers this year. We've had some high turnovers and some other schools in our neighborhood, and they just go vacant for the year, and they have subs, and they have, you know, teachers kind of pitching in and overseeing, and they're so overwhelmed, and that is not what I want for my student.
And for the students who likely need the most stability and permanence, and they're not getting it, and it can really disrupt their learning, their lifelong learning. You know, if there's not a positive experience, it becomes very challenging to overcome that further down the road. So
now, am I understanding, are some PTA positions paid positions?
No,
none.
Not until the national level.
Okay.
When
So
you get
not
to
on
the national, there are a
level.
couple of national board members, because it's a full-time job.
Okay.
So there are some salaries paid at the national level. Everything below that is volunteer.
Okay.
There are no paid PTA positions. So
Okay.
we're all volunteers.
Gotcha. And then from there, I mean, you've served on community councils, because you probably just, once you start learning, imagine if we infiltrated every single organization and opportunity, and we were those voices for our children. I think we could do amazing things.
Community councils are a tremendous tool in your schools. They hold elections once a year, and if you have the opportunity to serve on a community council, that is probably the easiest way with the least time commitment to serve in your school, where you can make meaningful and impactful change. It's typically a 1-hour meeting a month. And you are on your committee, and at the elementary level, by law, you are required to have more parents on that committee than you have administrators and school personnel. So that you really can impact the changes because it controls the curriculum of the school. So, yeah. Anyway.
I think we're about up on our time. I just hope we stress how important it is to empower you as parents to just get involved, to start anywhere, even if it's just showing up in the classroom, finding those needs, and then from there, those stepping stones that help to make inclusion and more accessible activities so that they think about your kid, that they are considering your child and maybe some of their limitations as they make plans for activities and programs, field days, all of it, right? We need to be that voice that can make it accessible for our children.
Yeah.
And that can be as easy as just pairing them with a typical peer that can be by their side and help them be successful in an activity.
Yeah.
And I think we can do wonderful things because that's our passion. That's,
I know we can.
Yeah. You've seen it.
Because we rock. Yeah. I know we can.
And find each other because
Mhm.
there is power in numbers and
Yeah.
more voices as we support and unite and build those bridges. And I think be that bigger voice that is lacking in
Yeah.
our schools.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Are there any
everyone.
other questions or final thoughts from any of our participants here that are on the Zoom call?
I just want to say thank you, ladies. You made this subject seem doable. It was a little overwhelming to me. And just the fact that you said to step in and just modify an already planned activity, that's where we can start. And I think that's a great idea. I think the benefits of being on the PTA as a special needs parent is really beneficial. And I appreciate what you did. Good job.
Thanks. Just show up. Show up to those activities. Go.
Yep.
Thank you,
play.
Kathryn, and thank you,
It should be fun.
Stacie.
Mhm.
Yeah, you guys made this so inspiring and offering your encouragement and your experience to help guide everyone else. So thank you so much for presenting to us today. And thank you everyone for attending. We are going to have more webinars. And so we'll send out this recording to anyone that was not able to make it live. We will have this available. We'll post it on our YouTube channel and we'll send it out as well. Thank you.